Today we're going to hear from Laura Delano. She was a professional psychiatric patient, in her own words, for over 10 years. She was going through very normal life stresses at school, but decided to trust the experts. She came from a family of means and went to Harvard's greatest hospitals and essentially was diagnosed with bipolar disorder. She was put on medications for over 10 years, which gradually made her worse and worse and sicker until she eventually tried to take her life. When she woke up from her coma in the years that followed, she began to doubt psychiatry and eventually came off her medications. After 3 grueling years of recovery, she emerged to become one of the leaders in the psychiatric deprescribing space. She started a nonprofit to educate people about psychiatric drug withdrawal. And just recently, she has released a very widely acclaimed book called Unshrunk as well, where she shares her story and how she was hurt by trusting the experts. And we're going to be talking with her today about what happened to her and why we should be skeptical about what establishment doctors say. So without further ado, let's get into it. Laura, you're a very threatening person to people out there. Your book's come out and it has been widely received as great, and people like it. But there's also a lot of people out there who are very uncomfortable about the message in there. And I guess I just want to get your response to that. What do you think is going on with people like, I guess, Ellen Berry, and some of these other folks that have just lashed out against the theme in your book of, coming off psychiatric medications?
I think a lot of that reaction comes from a place of fear, and fear fueled in large part by the idea of non-experts, at least insofar as how expertise is defined in our country, for the most part, of non-experts talking about topics that are perceived to be for the territory of medical doctors only. So I get it. I was ready for the vitriol. I was ready to be accused of being dangerous, of, practicing medicine without a license. I wasn't necessarily ready to be accused of killing people, which I have been, in certain, comments spread throughout the internet, which I try not to pay too much attention to. But, if this was me, if this was me 15 years ago, I would have been having the same reaction as well, because I had invested so much of my life, years and years and years, becoming mentally ill, basically making it my whole life's purpose. And so to see a story about someone who went in the opposite direction, I think would have been really hard for me to actually be open to. And I probably would have been one of the angry people on the internet bashing me.
Because, it shatters so many, your book shatters so many things. And also your work with Inner Compass and I guess the tapering coaching where it's sort of, it's not psychiatrists or, it's people who have been through psychiatric drug withdrawal themselves and are guiding people on what they've experienced firsthand. Like there's so many things that sort of shatter the mold here. One is that, hey, you might not need to be on psychiatric medications, that they may actually be making you sick. I think that can be a very threatening idea for some people who are really invested in the cure for me is the pill. But the other part of it is that the right person to help me with this might not be a doctor. And I know viewers on this channel, they know me and they know I speak very freely about how mediocre and dangerous mainstream psychiatry and medicine is, in the transactional visits and, the overdiagnosis and, just the med stacking. But, for the person out there who's like, I need these pills and, the doctors are the only ones who can really help me. You stand in opposition to that. And I think it's making people very uncomfortable.
I agree about the discomfort. And I do think we are in a time in which doctors have been, for the most part, put on a pedestal at the highest level of authority, of wisdom. And I remember, this is largely why I was psychiatrized for so many years, because I too once just took for granted that if you had M and D after your name, you understood me better than I understood myself. You understood my body better than I understood it. You understood my mind. And I do think we are in such a medicalized time as a culture where we are both deferring to medical authorities and learning to medicalize our day-to-day experiences. And so it's really hard to disentangle yourself from that. And I think the first step of, where you're even recognizing that this is what you're doing is the hardest. And so until you reach that point where you're ready to entertain the idea that expertise might not always come from the institution, you're going to hear a story like mine as an assault on everything good and true and right. So I get it.
I mean, it's kind of like, who is this bitch who is saying that you don't need meds? Like I need meds, and if she's going a different way, then like that could make you feel uncomfortable. It's just like, I have to take these meds every day, and there's this person out there saying, she's doing fine without it, but I can't see a path there, and now I'm mad, and now I'm jealous, and now I'm bitter. And rather than, I guess, maybe hearing your message, that they can attack you as a person. And they may even go so far as to say you're actually dangerous. You're killing people with this message.
Yep. Yeah. Well, and what's fascinating is that I have never once ever on the internet, anywhere, 15 years of doing this, never have I actually said to anyone, you should come off your meds, or you shouldn't take these meds. Because I don't actually think that I would know whether or not that's the right thing for someone else. Having been a patient for so many years, I'm very sensitized to how power works, and in these kind of, individual encounters that we have with people who are talking about your, as a patient, you're used to just talking about yourself all the time with other people, and then having them basically tell you what they think you should probably do. So I'm really sensitized to that kind of power dynamic. And so I even though all I've ever been doing from the beginning is share my own personal story and then share basic facts about the mental health industry that I ended up discovering in my own journey. That's all I'm doing. Yet somehow people hear that as me telling them that they're making a mistake for being on these drugs, or that they should come off, or that all drugs are bad. It's a fascinating phenomenon how people hear something that I'm totally not saying, and I can't change how they're interpreting it. I mean, I can do my best, but at the end of the day, I just have to let it go. And if someone reads my own personal story and thinks that's me telling them to come off their meds, I don't know what else I can do beyond saying, well, I didn't actually say that, but okay.
I think it's, I deal with some of this in my own work, and I get criticized by patients and by doctors. I have people who go on my, social media chats, and they'll post the contact information of the Utah Medical Board and encourage people to leave complaints about me. And so I, as sort of a target of this stuff myself, I reflect on it a lot also. And, when I think about the doctors, I think many of them, maybe in their heart of hearts, they know that it doesn't make sense to put people on meds after a 20-minute visit and then just simply ignore the fact that they're on meds, and you don't bring it up in the appointments, or if you do, it's up, down, stay the same, go down. They know that they're not really helping people with lifestyle interventions or anything like that. They also know that these meds don't work that well for everyone, and that people develop tolerance, and sometimes they get sicker and they become treatment resistant, and that it's just this big dice roll. And so I think they feel that, but then they rationalize it to themselves. They go, oh, well, we work in this insurance-based system, these drugs are the best that we have. And because they know that it's not good, but then they're also afraid to buck the system and to be like, there can be a better way and there can be another way. And so they rationalize it to themselves, and then they start working within this system that doesn't feel true to them. And they don't like it. I think a lot of psychiatrists and doctors doing mental health, they're just like, I really don't like this. And so when they see someone else who's doing it differently and just saying, no, this is not good, this is not great, we should be practicing differently, but they're unable to get themselves to that place, I think it makes them angry. Mm-hmm. I think they look at me and they go, hey, Dr. Yosef, who is this guy who thinks he doesn't need to conform to what we're doing? Who is this person who thinks that there's this other way? There isn't another way. You just need to suck it up and deal with the fact that, practicing mental health is, dirty and shitty. And I don't accept that. And so they don't like me for it. I'm not killing anyone, but, I also get comments like that as well. But I think deep down it does come from a place of just bitterness that, their unhappiness with their own situation, and just being like, that's not fair. It can't be done any other way because I'm not doing it that way.
Yeah, it's an interesting point. I mean, this system that we call the mental health system is so demoralizing and degrading and dehumanizing for all parties involved, not just the patients, mm-hmm. but as you said, the doctors too. I mean, it is clearly not working for anyone really on the whole, if you look at how people are actually doing. And I think, I'm sure you're right that anger and bitterness is a big piece of it, but I really think I always come back to fear. I think a lot of it is just when you've invested, like I can imagine being a doctor in my, 30s, 40s, 50s, where I've invested years and years and years and hundreds of thousands of dollars into this standard of care that I'm practicing, this diagnostic framework that I'm utilizing, this dynamic I have with my patients, to then have to step back and not only say to oneself like, ooh, this isn't working so great, but actually like, wow, maybe I've been harming my patients. I think it's just, it touches a primal, like core wound that I don't think a lot of doctors are ready to face, at least not without really kind of gentle, welcoming, kind of bridges to something else. I think that's a big part of what I love about your work, is that you're showing doctors how it can be done differently. And I think with time, it will feel more like a bridge into something else that invites them. But right now, because we're in the dark ages of this, and we're the ones forging, those of us over here on the layperson side, you and very few others on the doctor side, we're forging this path that has never been forged before. It's going to feel threatening before it feels inviting. And I think about that. I mean,
it is.
Yeah. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah. No, I was going to say, just to go to your point, we all think about ourselves as these ethical, moral beings, but to be confronted with the reality that, hey, a lot of the patients you've been treating, you're probably making them worse in the long run. And deep down inside, you might know this, or you might have, be willfully ignorant about it. It might feel off, but you choose to not go into it. And you've sold out in a way. You've sold out because you have student loans and you need money to pay them off. You've sold out because you want healthcare. You've sold out because you want to fit in polite society and with other doctors and not ruffle any feathers, or you've sold out to the pharmaceutical company to give talks to get a little bit more income. Most doctors wouldn't want to think about themselves as sellouts, as like, oh, I'm going to, not do what's in the best interest of my patients. I'm going to be willfully ignorant or just sort of deny it for money. And so I think ooh, what a wound there to come to terms with that and crawl out of it.